What is up, everybody? Welcome to DFS by the Numbers. These are my full card breakdown and predictions for Dana White's Contender Series week number 7.
I need all the wins, yeah. Harder than all of this. You better move, you might get knocked out. Knocked out. You better move, you might get knocked out. Knocked out. You better move, you might get knocked out. Knocked out.
And we are back for another Dana White's Contender Series breakdown and prediction video. This week we are breaking down week number 7. We are getting close to the end of the season. And I'll be honest, this is not my favorite week in the world. I mean, week number 7, I think it's probably my least favorite thus far, at least on paper. But, as always, we get fights on a Tuesday, so, no complaints for me. And sorry for the late delay. A little bit behind this week. These fights take so dang long to break down. But getting it out late, but getting it out nonetheless, would not miss a week. And next week will be out much earlier. We don't have UFC next week, so I'll be able to get this out early Monday, maybe even Sunday this week. So sorry for the late delay. But before we get into all the picks and predictions, if you guys can please leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you have not already. That'd be much, much appreciated. And then be on the lookout for UFC Vegas 79 content that'll be coming later in the week as well. But I say we get into it here. We're going to kick it off with the first fight of the card, and we have two Silvas. I don't know why they do this. It's annoying, so I got to do the whole first and last name thing through the entire breakdown so it doesn't confuse anybody. It might even confuse myself. But we have Igor da Silva going against Janota Silva. We'll start with Igor da Silva. This guy is 20 years old, 5'7", 7-0, and 5-0 in his last 5 fights. Janota Silva, he's 26 years old, 5'5", 8-1, and 5-0 in his last 5 fights. We'll take a look at Igor da Silva first. He's a guy that trains at Shoot the Box, training at the same gym as Mel Costa and Joe Anderson Brito. So very good gym there. Mel Costa is the guy that's been looking really good. We know how good Joe Anderson Brito is, so he's trained with guys like that. This guy's super young, only 20 years old. He's a finisher, a 100% finish rate, 44% of which come by knockout, 56% of which come by submission. This guy's never been the distance. He's going to be dangerous wherever the fight goes. On the feet, he has a lot of power. On the ground, he has a really slick submission game as well. This guy seems to be making really rapid improvements, and you're going to be making improvement, training at with guys like Joe Anderson, Brito, Mel Costa, guys like that, right? But he's making improvements each and every time he steps into the cage. He's very aggressive in there. He's wild. He throws hard and looks for the finish at all times. He loves to close the distance and let off with huge shots. Igor da Silva will go for takedowns. He has finished the majority of his wins by submission, has some good ground and pound as well. His submission game is very slick and has solid control when he gets it down to the mat. I would like to see him, go to the grappling route more often. And this is a fight especially where I'd kind of like to see him mix in the grappling a little bit. So we'll see if he does that. But I'd say primarily he likes to go out there and stand and bang and get into a war. But, he does have the submission game as well, which I do like. As far as Janota Silva, this is a guy that is training at Nova União / American Top Team Rome. This is a guy that doesn't have any notable wins or losses. Really, neither guy does, but they're not out there fighting complete bums. Janota Silva is a guy with a 63% knockout rate, 13% submission rate for an overall finish rate of 76%. Some notes I have on Janota Silva: he's been very inactive the last 5 years, which it could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing. What's he doing, in his time off? Is he out there, training? Is he getting better? Is he making improvements? And that's kind of where I'm leaning because in his very last fight, he had a 2-3 year layoff. He came back and looked like a completely different fighter. So, this inactivity in the last 5 years, I think it could be a good thing because I was watching fights with Janota Silva where he's 20 years old and he looked decent at 20 years old, but now he's 26 years old. So, yeah, he looks good. He brings a lot of pressure to the table, has a lot of weapons on the feet, very fast hands. He's very aggressive. Both these guys are very aggressive. He walks forward, those hard kicks to the body, to the legs. He's very defensively sound in there as well. He's very composed. Then he has this nasty head kick that he throws that has hurt multiple opponents. So his ground game looks a little bit iffy. I did see him get taken down in little footage I have seen of him. He was reversed in one of his fights, but he was able to end up, back on top. He was taken down multiple times in the fights I watched as well. The last fight, Cage Warriors fight, he was taken down, I think, pretty much in every single round. not the best look in the world, but at the very least, Jonata Silva, when he does get taken down, he's very active, and then also he does a very good job at getting back up. So although I think his takedown defense is kind of terrible, I don't think it matters too much. He does a really good job at getting back up. So, final thoughts on this matchup. It's a very good fight. I think this is probably my favorite fight on the entire card. I think it's probably the most well-matched fight on the entire card. From an entertainment standpoint, I'm really looking forward to this one. But from a pick standpoint, this is probably the toughest fight for me to call. Both of these guys are young. We have Igor da Silva, who's 20 years old, and Jonata Silva, who's 26, but he's been, very inactive the last several years. I don't like Jonata Silva's takedown defense, but like I said, he does a really good job at working his way back up. I think Jonata Silva is more defensively sound on the feet, and I like that head kick that he throws as well. I'm going to take Jonata Silva here to win this one by knockout. I think this is going to be a war. I think these guys are going to throw down, but this one can go either way in my opinion. We take a look at the odds. Igor da Silva is minus 175, and Jonata Silva is plus 150. Both these guys are kind of wild cards. Silva only 20 years old. This guy can be really good. And same thing with Jonata Silva. This guy's only 26, and he's been so inactive. So yeah, I think both these guys are pretty solid. Probably my favorite fight in the card, but I'm going to take Jonata Silva to kick us off and win this fight by knockout. Moving on, my goodness, this name. And usually I have time to practice some of these names. So, Kanyan Krascowski going against Dylan Mantello. We got Krascowski, who is 32 years old, 6 foot 14-1 and 5-0 in his last 5 fights. Dylan Mantello, he's 30 years old, 6'1", 7-2 and 3-2 in his last 5 fights. So let's start with Krascowski. This guy's training at Rivera Black Team. In terms of notable wins or losses, he did beat Adriano Martins by decision in 2019. Martins, obviously a former UFC fighter. This guy has an overall finish rate of 86%, 28% of which come by knockout, 56% of which come by submission. So Krascowski, he's a pretty experienced fighter, 15 fights, and has been fighting professionally for about 10 years now. Krascowski walks his opponents down, throwing hard kicks and combinations, attacks the body very well. He's very composed in there and takes his time. I would prefer, he would prefer to get the fight down to the mat and has a really good ground game. When he does get the fight down to the ground, he looks really good, has a ton of submission wins. Over half of his wins come by submission. I love the control he has when he gets on top, and he's very dangerous there as well, and he's very good at getting to the back. His cardio is great, and he can fight hard late into fights. He has multiple 5-round fights, so he's been to decision, I think, in a 5-round fight. I think he got like a 4th-round finish in a 5-round fight, so this guy can fight 15 minutes. It's not going to be a problem. I have seen him jump the gilly and end up on bottom, which is something you never like to see, but he was able to work his way back up to the feet. His takedown defense doesn't look great, but he is more than comfortable off of his back. Is very impressed with Krascowski there. As far as Dylan Mantello, this is a guy that is training at Longo and Weidman MMA, very good gym there. In terms of notable wins or losses, he lost to never mind. He has an 86% finish rate. He doesn't have really any notable wins or losses. He has an 86% finish rate, 56% of his wins by knockout, and then 28% of his wins by submission. So some notes I have on Dylan Mantello. This guy is pretty big for the division at 6'1", and he's going to have the height advantage in this matchup here. He's very long and loves that length on the feet. He uses it well. He uses a solid jab as well. Doesn't have a ton of power. Doesn't really put a lot into his shots. He can be a little bit low volume and keeps his hands low. But he's a pretty decent striker. I would like to see him let his hands go a little bit more. He was hurt bad in his last fight. He was dropped hard late in the first round. Like, it looked like he was on his way to getting finished in his last fight, but ended up getting a submission with like literally 1 second left. So he showed a ton of heart, showed a ton of toughness in his last fight, getting dropped that bad on the verge of getting out of there and ending up finishing the fight in his own right. It was a very good performance there. But wasn't the best look, right? Like, getting dropped and almost finished, like, it's not the best look in the world. As the fight goes on, he starts to kind of open up more, starts to get his rhythm going. He starts to, the volume starts to improve, and he loves to work that jab, work the body as well. I think Mantello's pretty decent. I have seen him taken down, but he was able to scramble up right away. He can be controlled against the cage, stuck there, lose some minutes. I like that he's training at a good gym, but I'm not sure if he's quite UFC ready yet. or at all. I mean, the guy's already 30 years old, so I wasn't like extreme. I don't think he's terrible. I just wasn't extremely impressed, nothing like that. So Krascowski is the much more experienced fighter in this matchup and has fought the much better competition. I feel like Krascowski is going to be the more dangerous fighter wherever the fight goes, but especially on the ground. I love the fact that Krascowski has 5-round experience and going 15 minutes will be no issue here for him. I think he can win minutes both on the cage, on the ground in this one. I'm going to take Krascowski to win this fight by decision. I was a lot more impressed with Krascowski, and I think this guy, is UFC caliber, whereas with Dylan Mantello, I'm not so sure. Wasn't too impressed with the guy. So give me Krascowski to win this fight by decision. All right, moving on, we have a strawweight fight, and we have Talita Alencar going against Stephanie Luciano. We'll start with Alencar here. She is training out of MMA Masters. She's 32 years old, 5'1", 4-0 in her last 4 fights, in her only 4 fights. Stephanie Luciano, she is 23 years old, 5'5", with a 5-1 record and 4-1 in her last 5 fights. So Alencar, like I said, she's training at an MMA Masters, really good gym there. No notable wins or losses for Alencar there. She's a solid finisher in her 4 wins, 3 of which come by submission for a 75% finish rate. So some notes I have here on Alencar. She is a BJJ black belt with an extensive grappling background. She is very small for the division at 5'1", and she's going to be obviously the smaller fighter in this matchup. She was dropped with the first punch that landed against her in her last fight. She is looking to get it to the ground. Alencar throws punches, to close distance. I mean, we know what she's going to do. BJJ black belt, she's looking to get the fight into the clinch and ultimately drag the fight down to the mat, and that's her world there. She's very hittable on the feet, but she'll throw with bad intentions. Like, she's not worried about getting taken down, nothing like that. She wants to grapple in there. She has good knees in the clinch, and she's not too comfortable at range. She's a lot more comfortable in the clinch and obviously on the mat. Her wrestling isn't too bad, which is nice to see. She does a good job of getting fights down to the ground when she wants to. The entries on her takedowns are quick. She did eat a nasty knee in her last fight when she shot him for a takedown. It sounded like it hurt really bad, but hey, she got the fight down to the mat, which was good. When she does get on top, like I said, it's her world. She's a very, very good grappler. She's heavy on top, and she's very dangerous. She's able to, get into dominant positions. She has some solid ground and pound as well. I love her control and composure on the mat. Like, she looks like very, very comfortable when it gets there, and she's going to want to get the fight down to the mat in this fight as well. Stephanie Luciano, she's training at Gordine Fight Team. She has a 40% finish rate, 40% of which come by knockout. No submissions on her record. So Stephanie Luciano, she was taken down and mounted instantly in her last fight, but she was able to work her way back up. She throws a lot of front kicks up the middle, but probably shouldn't throw those front kicks here. You don't want her to, get her kicks caught and taken down there. She has some solid forward pressure and volume, decent hands and kicks. Luciano is very strong in the clinch, and she likes to actually look to drag fights down to the mat herself, but, she will not want to go down to the mat here. I'm not the biggest fan of her striking, but there is no doubt she'll have the striking advantage here. It's obvious. She hangs out against the cage a lot and can win minutes there, but I'm not sure she's going to be able to do that here against, Alencar. But she seems pretty strong. I was not able to watch her only loss, which kind of sucks. I would have liked to see, how she lost the fight, but was not able to find footage of that. But overall, I just wasn't too blown away with Luciano here. So some final thoughts on this matchup. Alencar is a very dangerous grappler. We have a striker versus grappler matchup in this one. Luciano is going to be trying, doing everything in her power to keep this fight standing, where she'll have the advantage. But on the ground, it's Alencar all day. Alencar is going to just have her way with Luciano if this fight hits the mat. I think Alencar has good enough wrestling to get this fight down to the mat, and when she does get on top, I think it could be over shortly after. I like the ground and pound and the ability of Alencar to get into dominant positions and find submissions. And I'm going to take Alencar to win this fight by first round sub. Alencar minus 220, decent-sized favorite. Luciano plus 185. I'd probably look at a prop for Alencar instead. I mean, that minus 220 is a little bit too much for my liking, but I think she can go out there, get this fight down to the mat, and find a sub there. All right, moving on to the next fight. We got Jacoby Jones going against Daniel James Allen. We will start with Jacoby Jones, who is 27 years old, 5'9", 6-1 and 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Daniel James Allen, he is 31 years old, 6'1", with 4-0 record and 4-0 in his only 4 fights. So this is probably one of the more confusing matchups for me on this card. We'll start with Jacoby Jones. This guy trains out of Factory X Muay Thai, incredible gym. No notable wins or losses, but all 7 of his fights were in the LFA, so solid promotion. Jacoby Jones has a 66% finish rate, 33% of which come by knockout, 33% of which come by submission, and then he has a 33% finish or decision rate. So Jacoby Jones is the LFA champion. He has fast hands and really good combinations. He will come forward with a lot of volume, leaves a lot of openings to be countered though, but he shows a really good chin. He will throw some punches from like weird angles and that are able to find the target of his opponents. Will attack the body as well. I like his striking. His jab's nasty. I would like to see him go to the jab more as well. And his striking is just really fun to watch. So Jacoby Jones has really good takedown defense, and he will land some nasty elbows when his opponents try to shoot in. Will also reverse position, end up on top. This guy's really strong, and I really like his ground game when he is on top. And if he can end up on top, he has vicious ground and pound, and he's looking to finish the fight there. He completely destroyed his last opponent with elbows, and I to be honest, I kind of felt bad for the guy, and so did the ref because the ref stopped it like prematurely. He always seems to end up on top. And his ground and pound's elite, and he has some subs as well. I was very impressed with Jacoby Jones. I think this guy is really solid. Good striker, good grappler, good on just good everywhere. As far as Daniel James Allen, this guy is kind of a wild card to me. He's training at American Kickboxing Academy. This is a guy who has a 50% finish rate. Half of his wins come by submission here. Notable wins or losses, nobody at all. I mean, he hasn't fought anybody with even a winning record yet. So the level of competition is abysmal for Daniel James Allen. So some notes I have on Daniel James Allen. Like I said, the level of competition is pretty low. His opponents' combined record is 5-8, and 2 guys were 0-0. But he trains with some really good guys, including Usman Nurmagomedov at AKA. He's a very good wrestler and gets his opponents down to the mat easily. He has good control on top and is content to just sit in half guard and win minutes, burn out the clock. He doesn't really seem to want to strike in there, and he's looking to wrestle very early and often. He has good cardio and wear on his opponents for 15 minutes. The one time I did see him strike, he knocked out some 0-0 guy in 12 seconds, but that guy just clearly didn't belong in there. Daniel James Allen, he looks good, but against who? It's hard to tell how good this guy actually is. He looks phenomenal, but he's beating 0-0 guys. So I don't know. It's a tricky fight. So in terms of a pick, I gotta go with Jacoby Jones here. Jacoby Jones is going to be the more well-rounded fighter in this matchup, the much better striker. Should be by a mile. I mean, I haven't seen much of Daniel James Allen striking, but I haven't seen really, like I said, I haven't really seen much of it at all. I like his striking, Jacoby. I like his ground game. And like I said, Allen's an unknown. He's a wild card. He's training at a great gym in AKA, but he's fought the lowest competition imaginable. If he can go out there and ragdoll Jacoby Jones for 15 minutes, I would be very impressed. But I got to take Jones here to win this fight, and I think he can get on top at some point and finish this fight via ground and pound. His ground and pound's nasty. The elbows are nasty. Give me Jacoby Jones to finish this fight by second round knockout. But I'm very intrigued by this fight. I want to see what Daniel James Allen looks like when he fights a real opponent. So we'll see. Should be a fun one there. All right, and then we have the main event here. We have Shamil Gaziev going against Greg Velasco, heavyweight main event. We'll start with Shamil Gaziev, who is 33 years old, 6'4", 10-0, and 5-0 in his last 5 fights. Velasco, 29 years old, 6'2", 6-0, and 5-0 in his last 5 fights. We'll start with Gaziev. He trains out of KHK MMA team. This is a guy, in terms of notable wins or losses, he did beat Darko Stosic in his last fight by first-round knockout in Brave CF. Darko Stosic is a guy that used to fight in the UFC, used to fight at, I think, light heavyweight, but kind of bulked up there a little bit, Darko Stosic. So, yeah, solid win there. So, Gaziev has a 90% finish rate, 70% of which come by knockout, 20% come by submission. And the notes I have on Gaziev, he'll march forward with hard shots. He doesn't mind getting hit in the head. He'll just keep coming, really good chin. He'll eat one to give one, and his hands are very low in there. Like, he has no regards to any striking defense at all, and honestly, probably some of the worst striking defense I've ever seen, but he has a really good chin, is able to eat the majority of the shots coming his way. Everything his opponents throw lands. Like, in the Darko Stosic fight, Stosic probably went like 100% accuracy on everything he landed. Not the best look in the world, but when he gets hit, it doesn't really seem to affect him. It's just a scary game to play, especially at this level. He was actually dropped in his last fight against Darko Stosic, but he was able to pop back up right away after getting dropped. So he's aggressive with his pressure. He's high volume. Doesn't give his opponents room to breathe. He landed a nasty uppercut that knocked out Stosic there. And his pressure is something that most guys, especially in the heavyweight division, are not going to be able to keep up with. He can wrestle as well. He's very strong, very good control on top, and will look to advance to dominant positions. He is active at the ground and pound on top, and guys really struggle to get back up when he's on top there. If he wants to take you down, you're going down. He'll push opponents to the cage, take them down. He doesn't mind, pushing his opponents against the cage and winning minutes there as well. The cardio doesn't look great at all, but he's a massive heavyweight that implements a style that requires a lot of energy, and he's bound to eventually slow down. So I'm not too impressed with Gaziev, but he probably should win this matchup because he's taken on Greg Velasco. Greg Velasco is training at Bayshore Jiu-Jitsu. In terms of notable wins or losses, he lost to Hamdi Abdul-Wahab by decision as an amateur back in 2019. Velasco has an 83% finish rate, 50% come by knockout, 33% come by submission. So Velasco is the CFFC heavyweight champion. The CFFC, very, very good promotion. One of my favorite promotions personally. He's very hittable and can be backed up. He's very reckless as well, and will close distance by eating heavy shots. Has a really good chin, though. Both these guys have a good chin. I don't like him backing up and can be very low volume, but he does have power and very decent hands. He's a good counter striker and picks his shots very well. He may even have some success, countering in this fight with Gaziev coming forward with his hands down. So he will look to wrestle offensively, but I don't think he's a good wrestler. And I doubt he goes for takedowns in this fight, and if he does, he's not getting them. Takedown defense looks bad, and I'm sure that's going to be tested in this fight here. He was taken down in his last fight just multiple times, time after time, and he was getting dominated in his last fight. And then all of a sudden, his opponent gassed out in the second round. He ended up on top and just pounded him out. I mean, his opponent had nothing left in the tank, and he's not going to want to get taken down in this fight. So, we have Gaziev. He's minus 600. Velasco's plus 425. I probably will be looking to fade Gaziev in the future, but this is the matchup where I have to pick him here. It's a sloppy, greasy heavyweight fight. I like Gaziev in this one. His striking defense worries me a lot, but his chin is held up thus far. He should be the minute winner here. I like the forward pressure, the wrestling, and I think he can get takedowns and win minutes. I like Gaziev to win this fight by decision, but I imagine it's going to get greasier and greasier the longer this fight goes. But Gaziev should win this fight anywhere it takes place. So give me Gaziev to win this fight. Don't parlay him up, but Gaziev here by decision. Those are the picks. Thank you so much for watching. Again, sorry for the late release there, but the next video, week 8, will be out on time, if not earlier. Please leave a like on your way out, subscribe to the channel, and best of luck. If you guys are betting anything on this card, I probably will have no bets on this card personally, but enjoy the fights. Should be a decent card here. Best of luck, everybody.